I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hillstring Gang or Angola 3. I'm here for life, I'm here to die. Inside these walls, inside the wire. And when the wolf cries, I know it's over. Oh, Bloody Angola. Oh, Bloody Angola.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. I'm Jim Chapman. And look, before I get into today's episode, I got a quick update. We're having some changes to Bloody Angola. Now, if you listen to Real Life Real Crime Daily on Tuesday, Woody and I discussed some changes that are coming up. That show will be going away on the 1st of November. Hey everyone, and welcome to Real Life Real Crime Daily. I'm Jim Chapman.
And I'm Woody Overton.
And this is part 2 because the lights just flickered on and off. So we're going to.
We never had that happen in all the years in the
Yeah,
studio.
man.
It was like Jim had a really good statement and the devil didn't want it to come out. He said, and look, there's no light, no storm outside or anything like that. It's all good.
Yeah. Well, Woody's been talking about some changes coming and good changes for the Real Life Real Crime feed. So let's talk about that.
All right. Well, we've been doing this for a minute, and we've had a lot of fun. A lot of great things that have happened. Look, you've been super successful. Also, during the meantime, you got one of the top shows in the world now, Scandals.
Files of the Elite. Thank God for Diddy.
Yeah, right. So y'all go check that out. But y'all, the business side of things, like when Jim and I started the show, it was just Jim and I, and then we got Ago involved, and things transpired and what have you. But you're always trying to
improve,
seek different avenues and different things, and some things work and some things don't, and some things, they are what they are. But we did the daily show on the Real Life Real Crime original feed, and then the WOW was a side thing too, and all that. I was just bringing the Real Life Real Crime back to Real Life Real Crime, and mainly I decided that the hashtag Justice For series is going to be a big part of what I do going forward, which is I had shied away with it for so many years because it takes so much, but I'm actually going to help these families, and I have cases lined up, et cetera, but it's boots on the ground shit.
And and that was the point I was trying to make earlier before we had the hiccup here, but a lot of these shows, especially these cold case shows, and at no fault of the people who host them, they just don't have the experience or the knowledge to actually investigate these cases. So what they'll do, and their goal is to just bring awareness to it, and that's important and that's good.
Right.
But the difference there between what a Real Life Real Crime or hashtag Justice For brings to the table is that those shows It's actually investigating it with an investigator. That is night and day.
Yeah, I mean,
difference.
I think you're right. The difference is the personal connection.
Yeah.
And I sit with these families. They become my families, and it's heart and soul.
And you're invested in it.
Let me show you this.
At that time. You get emotionally invested in
Let me
this.
show you this. And look, y'all, the best shit that we ever do is unscripted. I got to get to my current photos.
He's seeking through his photos.
And we were just talking. God damn it. I don't even know how to do this.
Go ahead and find that, and I'll keep
outside
them entertained. I'll sing to them.
Right. We were talking about, before we came in here, however we were going to tell y'all what we had to tell you, and then we're like, you know what? Since the beginning, we've just been rolling unscripted.
Yeah.
When people would come in to interview or whatever, and we'd be like, no, don't tell us. Save it for in there, because you never know what's going to come out behind the microphone. Give me 1 second. All right, so look at this. This is my bedside table now.
Oh, wow.
See that picture of that girl?
He's showing a picture of a beautiful girl.
That's Haley.
Wow.
So she's the first thing I see when I wake up and the last thing I see before I go to bed.
Yeah.
And it was Courtney Coco was the same way. Miss Stephanie had sent me her cheerleading picture and her high school graduation picture, and that's my actual case files that on that yellow legal pad.
Yeah.
I spend that every night, before I go to sleep, right, taking more notes on different things. And it's just a lot. And I think that, like on Mary Pusho's case, I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to do it. I didn't want to have to put that kind of energy and heart and everything like Courtney Coco's. And then finally that night, Life has been reaching out to me. And Mama Karen Ortolano finally messaged, said, will you please just talk to the sister? It's one of my good friends. And I can't tell Mama no, right?
Right.
Mama Karen. And so I did, and then she told me the story, and then sent me the picture. And I said, let me call you back. And I showed it to my wife, and she said, how can you not use your God-given gifts and your platform that he gave you to go solve this girl's homicide?
Right.
And we did it. But I hadn't done one since. But I'm going in that direction, y'all. There'll still be real life, real crime originals. But the hashtag Justice4 is a lot. And like this case is out of Atlanta. This one isn't even in Louisiana. And I had boots on the ground in Atlanta, and now it's going to be an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot going on. And I love doing the Daily Show. It's going to be on its own feed. But I don't know. What do you say?
If you like those past episodes, the past episodes will be on a new feed.
Right. But I mean, like the basically this is like the swan song, for daily. And it's a sad thing, but it's kind of an exciting thing too, because the future is right. And Jim and I are still going to be working together on things with love him more than anything in the world. It's been a great run, but it's just time to, And look, you're rolling hard too. And I know that you're rolling. I always said you were the hardest working man in show business, but now you really the hardest working man in show business. and I get that too. And it's been great, bro.
Yeah, it has. And we've been working together for 4 years or so,
5 years.
coming close to 5.
Yeah. And we're going to continue to work together on things. It's we will always, I will always be accessible to you, and I know you will always be accessible to me.
Yeah.
And
we know people out there, some people, what happened with Jim and Woody?
And this same
Jim wants to cut Woody's dick off. That ain't the case here.
Look, the past, I've had, people that were associated with the show that some of them just had to be let go, right?
Yeah.
And some of those were definitely some of them were just business and some of them were kind of nefarious, but whatever, that is what it is. And it's done. And I wish those people well, but this is not one. This is something that if it could be avoided time wise and stuff, it would be, but it just can't. And I think that, we're going to both continue to go on and do great things, together.
Yeah.
Some, but certainly I can't wait to see. I know you got a lot of stuff in the works, and
a lot,
and we got that too. So, but y'all, it's been a hell of a ride.
Boy, it has, and
I'm gonna miss coming in and getting my frappe and
that's right,
muffin on the way, and coming in the morning whether it's cold or hot, and
and we'll still maybe every now and then do an episode together or something if time permits for both of us. But with these type of shows and really with this type of industry, it's something that you have to constantly evolve, and you have to really pay attention to what your audience wants. And real life real crime's evolving, and in some ways is going back to its roots, but in some ways is original content that features Woody Everton as it should.
Right. Well, that's how it got started. But
exactly.
I've always been that guy, like you, hustler. You want to branch out and do. But, I don't think people understand it's so much more than just podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
It's all the social media and the
research
Facebook pages, and when you're in the research, but even like just something as simple as going and checking the Real Life Real Crime Daily Facebook page. Yeah. And when I've got 7 other Facebook pages I got to check.
Right.
And I know, you always kept that up and you did the posting and everything else. It's just so much more than podcasting. And I'm not complaining. No. I'm blessed, no doubt about it. Been blessed by way beyond anything that I ever dreamed of. And we were blessed on the Daily Show. And I mean,
all the way around.
Had a lot of fun. You and I didn't have any hiccups, but there were some hiccups in it.
You hiccups.
And I think everybody knows about that. But, and shit got worked out, and it is what it is. But, I don't know. I miss it, but it'll be there. We'll let y'all know where. I don't even know what we call that feed. I guess the Daily Show. I don't know, but it'll be anywhere you can listen to a podcast.
Yeah. So if
but it won't be on.
We'll put a link on our socials and stuff of the.
It won't be on the original Real Life Real Crime link anymore.
Correct. Right. Yeah, you'd have to go to that, and it won't be the Daily Shows won't be updated on that feed. There may be some things I don't know that are placed on there, but the Daily Show won't, as it won't be on that feed any longer.
But y'all been great in true classic form. Love and appreciate each and every one of y'all, and thank you for listening and liking and sharing. And Jim, my brother from another mother, I love you. Future's so bright, we got to wear shades. And we were so busy, we got to hire some people, and that's a good problem.
If I had hair, I'd turn it loose. Right? We are busy.
That's a good problem to have, and we're busy because of y'all. And look, just thank you.
Yeah, look, and when I started this with Real Life Real Crime way back in the day. It was just to help and do what I felt like I was good at, which was the world's best editor, and
that's the truth.
And so that kind of branched into all these other things that I had an opportunity, and I was blessed to get those opportunities, and very thankful. For that.
And you got Envision Podcast Studios now, of course, local leaders. You got Scandalous. You got so producing so many different shows, and it all is the same thing that I was talking about earlier. Like we were talking about branching out, expanding in you know what my daddy says about that?
What?
Either you got it or you don't.
Yeah.
You got the drive or you don't. And it doesn't, you know, this is not a failure for the Daily Show because the numbers were still there and everything else. It's a failure on time and how do you explain it? Time and circumstance, I guess.
Yeah.
In wanting to and going to branch out in these other directions.
Yeah, and look, let me say it, and I touched on it earlier, but with the Justice Force series and the way that Woody does it, which is totally different than any other podcaster does it, it requires a lot of time, and it requires, you know, he's going to these places, he's getting really emotionally invested, which is, it's hard to turn your brain in another direction anytime you get emotionally invested with something. So, you know, that's a big part of it too, is you only have 24 hours in a day. So, you know, you'll still be getting entertaining content from everybody that's ever been affiliated with this show. It'll just be in a different way and form.
Right. It's going to be
really,
it's going to be love. It's going to be something to see. I'm
no doubt about it.
Sad but excited and blessed, you know, to have done this and watch it grow and morph and
yeah. And let's talk about Bloody Angola real quick. Yeah. So Bloody Angola, which is more of a passion for me and Woody than anything else. We both just love that history. Well, we love history and historical prisons, and especially
first year in existence of one People's Stories podcast.
Done a lot with
for
that
history.
And it's still going strong.
Right.
So Woody is still going to be owner of that show, just like me. Right. And because of time, he's going to be more kind of in and out of that show,
which I have been lately anyway.
Yeah, well, it's both of our faults. Right. But that was a good signal to both of us that our time is just getting pulled in so many different directions that. So if continue to listen to it, and Woody will be on there. We'll try to get him on every couple months or every month or so. I still owe you a trip to Angola. Yeah,
the guy that, well, I'm not gonna say his name. He told me I saw him at a dove hunt, and he said, man, it ain't the same. He said, I can't. He's an ex something up there. He said, I can't just do it like it used to because all the changes are coming down and the administration and you head of the department, whatever system being worked on. And there'll be a million stories that can come from that. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So we're going to keep as many shows around as we can. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
We know y'all love that stuff, and there'll be more upcoming. I'm looking forward to it. Anything real life girl. Look, I was a fan first,
right?
Before I ever got affiliated with the show, I was a fan of the show,
and I appreciate it, and I love you much. And it's been fun, bro. And we ain't done.
No, we ain't done.
All right,
no, we ain't done.
Well,
all right, peeps. So now you got the inside scoop.
There you go, inside scoop, and love. I guess so. One more time, love and appreciate each and every one of y'all, and thank you for liking and listening and sharing, and hey, all that good podcaster shit. Until next time, I'm Jim Chapman, and I'm Woody Overton.
We are your host of Real Life, Real Crime Daily. Peace. Boom. So there was some changes coming to, obviously, several things that we do. But one thing that is not going to change, Bloody Angola is not going anywhere. And coming up, we're going to focus on some series episodes with Bloody Angola that I think are going to knock your socks off. So get ready for that. And look, it's Halloween. This is a Halloween special episode, but I wanted to get all of that out of the way prior to bringing you this, and it'll be a little abbreviated compared to the length of our normal episodes because I know all of you either want to get out there with your kids and trick or treat, or maybe you are like me and your kids are grown, but you hand out candy and you enjoy seeing all the cool costumes and stuff like that. And I want you to be able to get to that. I've got some really fun, different stuff for you. You know, with all these crime shows, we talk about a lot of things that are disturbing, for lack of a better term, sometimes. So I love doing these holiday episodes where it's a little bit funner, a little bit lighter, I guess you could say. But with Halloween, it's also a little bit scarier. So we're going to talk about two things that I researched. One of them is America's most haunted prisons and jails. And let me tell you, there is nothing out there better than a haunted prison if you're someone that's into Halloween. And so I kind of compiled a top 10 list of the most haunted prisons and jails in the United States. And I'm going to start with number 10 and work my way backwards and kind of give you a little bit, just a couple of paragraphs of a history on each of these. So today I'm going to be like the David Letterman, the top 10 list of Halloween podcast hosts. So here we go. Number 10, Missouri State Penitentiary. Now that's in Jefferson City, Missouri. And believe it or not, the Missouri State Penitentiary is known currently as the Walls. They copied off of Louisiana State Penitentiary, y'all. We were the Walls. How dare they? So it's also known as the Walls and was constructed in the early 1830s to serve the newly admitted state of Missouri. The earliest prisoners made the bricks that the first walls were built from, which was common during that time. Prison labor, right? The initial prison population consisted of one guard, one warden, 15 prisoners, and a foreman for the brick making operation with an assistant. 11 of the 15 prisoners were from St. Louis, and all were incarcerated for larceny, theft, except for one who was in prison for stabbing a man during a drunken brawl. Needless to say, that prison grew many times over the years. It eventually closed, but get this, 2004, so it had a long history. Now, during its operation, it saw many infamous prisoners, including Charles Pretty Boy Floyd, James Earl Ray, Bobby Greenlease, kidnappers Carl Austin Hall, and Bonnie Haiti. They were actually executed at that prison. In 1954, there was a major riot at the penitentiary. The Missouri State Highway Patrol, the National Guard from Missouri, and the police departments from Jefferson City, St. Louis, and Kansas City were called to help stop that disturbance. And when it was all over, 4 inmates had been killed, 29 were injured, and there had been 1 attempted suicide during the riot. 4 guards had been seriously injured and several buildings had been burned. During its operation, 40 inmates were executed in the gas chamber. Time magazine once called it, get this, the bloodiest 47 acres in America. They're copying off of Louisiana State Penitentiary again, except for we're a hell of a lot more than 47 acres around here. Now, since its closure, the penitentiary has become a hotspot for paranormal activity. Staff members and visitors actually reported dozens of eerie encounters with lingering spirits, which have been seen, heard, and encountered firsthand. So that's number 10 on the list. Number 9, Wyoming Territorial Prison. That's in Laramie, Wyoming. The westward expansion of the railroad brought more than money and high times to the people of Laramie. It also brought a score of unsavory men and women and a crime rate that rivaled much larger eastern cities. As a result, the Wyoming Territorial Prison was built as a federal penitentiary in Laramie in 1872. The facility was plagued with problems from the start, with a fire in 1873 and a number of escapes. Of the 44 prisoners accepted in the first 2 years of the operation, 11 escaped. By 1877, the prison was overcrowded, and as its reputation worsened, changes were made and a second cell block was constructed. It became a state prison from 1890 to 1901. There were at least 5 cells for female inmates and several solitary confinement cells. Soon-to-be famous outlaw Butch Cassidy was incarcerated here from 1894 to 1896. After its closure in 1903, the prison was given to the University of Wyoming, which used it for livestock breeding experiments until 1989. It opened to the public as a historic site 2 years later, and stories of ghosts began to circulate. With more than 1,000 inmates housed there over the years, it's to be expected that some of the prisoners or guards might linger behind. However, there's one prisoner who is more active than the others. His name is Julius Greenwald, and he was sent to the prison for the 1897 murder of his wife. And prison lore states that Greenwald was adept to making cigars and convincing prison staff to allow him to make and sell cigars while incarcerated. He allegedly made the cigars from his cell on the 3rd floor, a cell that was removed during renovation of the site. Allegedly, Greenwald's spirit did not appreciate this at all, and he has manifested as a phantom cigar smell at the prison ever since. How about that? And we're going to go to number 8, and that is West Virginia Penitentiary. That's in Moundsville, West Virginia, and that prison was built on the edge of Moundsville. This was in 1866. The prison remained open for 129 years, and it finally closed down in 1995. During that time, the structure housed thousands of prisoners. Many lost their lives there through both state-sanctioned executions and during prison violence. Since its closure, the prison had become one of the most haunted sites in the country. Staff members and visitors alike have reported ghosts in the North Hall, where the most dangerous inmates are housed, and the execution chamber, where old Sparky sent many to its early grave. And the Hole, a brutal solitary confinement area that often drove inmates to insanity and suicide. Ghost hunters have flocked to the former penitentiary over the years, and visitors claim to have experienced the sound of phantom footsteps, voices, noises that have no explanation, cold chills, and an overwhelming feeling of panic. How about that? And we're going to go to Pottawatomie County Jail, and this is in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and it was built in 1885, and that jail is one of the most unusual houses of incarceration in America. The jail has a 3-tier cell block with 10 cells on each tier. It was originally designed to rotate continuously throughout the night by means of a water wheel in the basement, so it earned the nickname of the Squirrel Cage Jail. In this way, all the prisoners could be watched from a central location. Unfortunately, the 45-ton cell block was simply too heavy to work right, and it became stuck frequently. Eventually, the jailers gave up on the plan, and a night guard had to be hired. The cylinder continued to be used until 1960, when a prisoner died in his cell and the cell block jammed, trapping the body in the cell for several days. After that, cell doors were cut into every cell. The jail was closed down in 1969, and during its history, 4 deaths occurred within its walls. One man died of a heart attack, another in a fall when he tried to write his name on the ceiling, another hanged himself in a cell, and the last after an incident in which an officer actually shot himself in the confusion of protecting the jail from an angry mob during the farmers' holiday strike of 1932. It's no surprise that these unlucky individuals, along with others, are believed to still linger that jail. And we'll go to Crown Point, Indiana, in Lake County Jail. And the Lake County Jail is located in the county seat of Crown Point. It was built in 1908 and enlarged 20 years later. At that time, county sheriffs were required to live at the jail, and so the combined residence and jail included all the facilities needed for its purpose as a law enforcement institution. Located within the walls were the family's living area, a warden's residence, department offices, 150 cells, maximum security accommodations, institutional kitchen, food, storage, heating, and cooling systems. They even had a barber shop and a garage. It was considered to be one of the finest in Indiana, and it was thought to be escape-proof. However, on March 3rd of 1934, gangster John Dillinger proved it to be otherwise when he made a daring escape that gave the jail its infamy. The jail remained in operation until the 1970s when it became a historic site. As restoration has continued over the last 20 years, stories have emerged about the haunting in the jail. Apparitions have been seen in the cells and corridors. Strange photographs have been taken. Doors open and close by themselves. Lights turn on and off. And disembodied footsteps and voices have often been reported by volunteers and staff alike. Pretty freaky. And we're going to go to Chicago, Illinois, and I'm going to tell you about a haunted police station. It's known as Maxwell Street Police Station, and this police station is known as Bloody Maxwell. How about that? Because of the escalating crime rate in the area. It was constructed in 1889, and at that time, the surrounding part of the city was home to thousands of Italian immigrants, including the Jenna brothers, who partnered with Al Capone's organization during Prohibition to make bootleg liquor within blocks of the police station. It became a notorious police station known for corruption, bribery, brutality, and torture, and many lawbreakers never left the basement dungeon, quote unquote, alive. The station closed down in 1997 and became to be used by the security officers for the nearby University of Illinois Chicago campus. It's currently being used for filming of the television show Chicago PD. Although the cops and criminals of the station's past are long gone, legend goes they still linger there, especially those who brutalized and were killed in the dungeon. Screams have been reported coming from the basement, along with moaning, crying, and the sounds of rattling bars and handcuff chains. Ohio Penitentiary. And this was formerly in Columbus, Ohio. This penitentiary was opened in 1834 and first condemned by reformers in the early 1900s. It was not closed down until 1979, and the prison has since been demolished, but haunting memories of it remain. During its years of operation, the prison saw scores of deaths from fire, outbreaks of disease, murder, and executions in the state's electric chair, but nothing matched the horror of the fire that engulfed that prison in April of 1930. This fire swept through the west block of the penitentiary. It killed 322 inmates in a single night. While the prison was still open, inmates complained of ghostly sightings and eerie happenings, but when the buildings were finally torn down, tales quickly spread of apparitions among the ruins. Eventually, the prison was replaced by a sports arena, which is also rumored to be haunted. Stay away from Ohio Penitentiary. And we're going to stay in Ohio, but we're going to go to Mansfield, Ohio for this one, and this is Ohio State Reformatory. And the Ohio State Reformatory was actually made famous by The Shawshank Redemption, which was filmed there. It was opened in 1896 as a prison for criminals too old for juvenile facilities and not hardened enough for the penitentiary. It saw untold thousands of prisoners during its years of operation, and while once applauded as a place that could be humanely reformed for first-time offenders, the conditions deteriorated to the point that it became known for abuse, torture, and murder. Already considered overcrowded and inhumane by the 1930s, the massive prison was kept open until 1986, even after a federal lawsuit was filed by the inmates citing that it was unfit for human occupation. Since the closing of the reformatory, stories have circulated that it is haunted by the tormented spirits of former inmates, guards, and prison officials who simply never left. Apparitions take place in the cells where the inmates once lived, suffered, and sometimes died. One of the resident ghosts is reported to be Helen Gladdick, the wife of Arthur Gladdick. She died at the local hospital in 1950 after a loaded handgun fell from a closet shelf in the warden's apartment and went off. Her spirit has allegedly remained in the apartment ever since, often manifesting as the smell of perfume. Spooky. Now I'm going to give you the top two, and we'll start with number two, and you probably expected this one. Alcatraz in San Francisco, California. The Rock. The name given to Alcatraz Penitentiary was the ultimate American prison. It was the place where scores of the country's worst criminal offenders bloodletters, bad men and escape artists called the end of the line. Although it started as a military prison for 29 years, the prison kept the country's most notorious lawbreakers, including Al Capone, Doc Barker, George Machine Gun Kelly, and others confined behind stone walls. The initial prison was built in 1859 but fell into disrepair by the 1920s. It was reopened in 1933 to be an escape-proof federal prison, and it was the brutal place of punishment and confinement with few privileges. Suicide, murder, and even insanity became common. In 1946, several inmates attempted a violent and bloody escape from the Rock, but failed. There were a handful of other attempts, but only one successful attempt in 1962, when 3 bank robbers, using handmade rubber rafts and dummies with real human hair, vanished into the dark waters of the bay. Alcatraz was closed down 1 year later in 1963. Regarded as one of America's most haunted places, ghosts have been widely reported ever since, even by staff members of the National Park Service, which now operates that property. Ghosts have been sighted along with strange sounds, screams, yells, weeping, and even eerie music. And that brings us to number 1 on this list, and there is no debate here. Look all over Google. Everybody says this is the most haunted. It is Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Founded by Quakers in 1829 who envisioned the stone castle as a place where criminals could become penitent for their crimes, hence the name penitentiary. That's where that comes from. The prison was a place of total isolation. Inmates were confined in windowless rooms and allowed no contact with any living person. Many of them were driven insane by the solitude. Punishments for breaking the rules were extreme and suicides became common. Solitary confinement was ended in the 1870s, and a century later, the prison was closed down. Since that time, ghost stories and paranormal encounters, they've become commonplace. Apparitions have been seen, mysterious footsteps heard, and strange sounds reported. And believe it or not, Eastern State Penitentiary is now like a haunted house. Like they do it up for Halloween. And it's almost something you want to take a trip to. Look, any Pennsylvania listeners out there, let me know if you've ever been to Eastern State Penitentiary. Tell me about it. We'll pass it on to the rest of the listeners. So that is your top 10 America's most haunted prisons and jails. And I got one more cool thing for you today on Halloween, and that is I'm going to give you a list of terrifying convicts who committed murders on Halloween night. And these are in no particular order, but I'm going to tell you about 2 friends, Leslie Ann Mazzario and Adrian Asagna, and they were stabbed late one Halloween night. Those 2 and their friend Lauren Menzino were busy handing out candy to trick-or-treaters in Napa, California on Halloween night of 2004. At around 11 p.m., the 3 women went to bed not knowing there will be one more visitor that night. Menza awoke to a scream in the upstairs bedroom, ran out of the house, and drove away, leaving her 2 friends behind. Sadly, those 2 friends were stabbed to death upstairs. Eric Matthew Copel, a friend of one of the victims, eventually turned himself in and confessed to the murders, though he never told anyone his motive. No one. Copel is serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. In 1979, Shirley Ledford was hitchhiking home from a Halloween party. Back in the 70s, you hitchhiked. When 2 men picked her up, they were in a dingy van. Little did she know the 2 men were known as the Toolbox Killers. Lawrence Betaker and Roy Norris were famous for picking up female hitchhikers and torturing them with tools typically found in a toolbox. They often took pictures of the victims during their slayings. After torturing Ledford, they dropped her body on a stranger's lawn, and Ledford became the pair's 5th and final victim after a friend turned them in. Betaker was sentenced to death but died in 2019 of natural causes, and Norris, who cooperated during the investigation, was given 45 years to life. And we'll go back to Halloween of 1975, and 15-year-old Martha Moxley left her Connecticut home to attend a costume party. On Halloween morning, she was found dead in the backyard, beaten to death by a golf club. 25 years later, a guy by the name of Michael Skakel, who was also 15 at the time of the slaying, was convicted of the murder and sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. However, he maintained his innocence, and on May 4th of 2018, the Connecticut Supreme Court vacated his conviction, and in 2020, the case was actually reopened. And the next one I'm going to tell you about, I remember very well. This happened in 1992, and it was really close to home in New Orleans, where a Japanese exchange student never made it to his Halloween party. And if you're a Louisiana listener, most of you are probably familiar with this. When Yoshihiro Hattori, a Japanese exchange student, went out on Halloween night in 1992, he was heading to a party in New Orleans, but he wasn't familiar with the neighborhood he was in. Hattori struggled to find the address to the event, and when he eventually thought he had found the house the Halloween party was at, he knocks on the door. He doesn't get an answer, so he walks back towards his car. Suddenly, the door of the house opened, and Hattori said, "We are here for the party." But the man in the doorway shot Hattori with a revolver. Now, it turns out Hattori was at the wrong address, and when police questioned the homeowner, a guy by the name of Rodney Pears, he claimed he had been scared and he thought the student was trespassing on his property with criminal intent. Pears was charged with manslaughter, but invoked what's known as the Castle Doctrine, in which Americans can claim they have the right to apply lethal means to protect their homes. And believe it or not, he was found not guilty by a jury. And I didn't agree with that decision at all. I remember being disgusted by that. Sometimes I feel like he's still in America. Hattori's father told the news someday he'll be back home. I say to myself, what a sad story. And I'm going to tell you, look, I'm the first one to say protect your freaking property and all of that stuff. But this was not that situation. This kid was not armed. He went to the door. He was walking back to his car and turned around and said, "Hey, we're here for the party." It was just awful, horrible situation. But we'll bring you to the next one. We're going to tell you about Peter Fabano. He died in what police said was a crime of passion in the late 50s on Halloween night. This was actually 1957. So him and his wife, Betty Fabiano, they go to sleep and they thought they were finished with trick-or-treaters. But in the middle of the night, the doorbell to their LA home rings. Peter got out of bed and brought candy to the door, thinking it's a trick-or-treater. On the doorstep was a woman wearing a mask. She raised her hand, which was in a paper bag, and shot him in the chest. He died instantly. Police eventually arrested a woman by the name of Joan Rebel, who reportedly had a sexual relationship with Peter's wife, Betty. It's believed Rebel talked another woman, Goldlyn Pizer, into murdering Peter. Rebel was convicted of second-degree murder along with Pizer and was sentenced to 5 years to life in prison. 5 years to life. Haven't heard that one too much. Both women were later released, and Betty was never tried for any connection in her husband's death. And we'll go to 1981 on Halloween night, and Sister Tadna Ben's body was found naked in a convent in Texas. The other nuns in the house, they noticed a broken window in the community room, so they called the police, and authorities found Ben's clothing and a knife under the bed. Meanwhile, an autopsy revealed the nun was stabbed, strangled, and sexually assaulted. Oh, it's horrible. Police arrested a man who lived across the street by the name of Johnny Garrett after a witness saw him running from the convent that evening. He was convicted and sentenced to death in 1992. His last words, get this, were reported to be, "I'd like to thank my family for loving me and taking care of me, and the rest of the world can kiss my ass. Well, Johnny Garrett, you can kiss my ass. How about that? And we're going to go to New York for the next one. And look, Halloween night, trick or treat, right? You might get your house rolled. You might get it egged, whatever. In this case, throwing eggs on Halloween night, which is typically known as a harmless prank. But in 1998, it turned deadly. A 21-year-old Bronx resident by the name of Carl Jackson and his girlfriend, they go to pick up their son from a party. Teenagers throw eggs at the car. That pissed me off too. Jackson gets out of the car to yell at the pranksters. In response, one of the teenagers pulls out a gun and shoots Jackson through the head. He dies instantly. 17-year-old Curtis Sterling was charged with second-degree murder and criminal possession of a firearm. He was convicted and is serving 20 years in prison. He receives a card in the mail every Halloween that reads, "I'm glad you're still there. Get this, from Jackson's mother." That's pretty sweet. Let me tell you about William Liskey. He killed his family members on Halloween. In 2010, 16-year-old Devin Griffin, he comes home on Halloween to play video games after attending church and spending the previous night sleeping out. He noticed that his Michigan home was a little bit too quiet, so he goes to check on his family members. Griffin proceeded to find his stepfather in bed covered in blood. When police arrived, they found two more bodies, Griffin's mother and Griffin's brother. Police eventually learned the murderer was Griffin's stepbrother, William Liskey. Liskey beat his older stepbrother, Derek Griffin, with a hammer, shot his father, William Liskey, 5 times, and then sexually assaulted and shot his stepmother, Susan Liskey. Liskey pleaded guilty to 3 counts of aggravated murder to avoid the death penalty, but was found dead in his jail cell in 2015 from a self-inflicted wound. And just quickly, one more, a 1981 Halloween night brutal killing that remains unsolved. Photographer Ronald Sisman and Smith College student Elizabeth Platzman were beaten in their Manhattan apartment. This was in 1981 on Halloween night before being shot dead. The apartment was completely ransacked, but nothing was missing. And to this day, that remains unsolved. And look, I want to wish every single one of you a happy Halloween. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Look for some big time stuff about to hit for Bloody Angola podcast. Stick with us. It's going to be good. And until next time, I'm Jim Chapman, your host of Bloody Angola, a podcast 142 years in the making, the complete story of America's bloodiest prison. Peace.
I walk a straight line, shackled and chained. Oh, gruesome Gertie is calling my name. There is no mercy in this penitentiary. Just ask the Hill String Gang or Angola 3.